back this week. We've had multiple departmental professional development sessions for our staff already this week. New teacher orientation started yesterday and continues today. And we are excited to welcome to date over 104 new students to the Hope County School family. One other highlight that we'd like to share is that Mrs. Denise Cummins, she's our animal science teacher at Hope County High School. Ms. Cummins has been selected as a finalist for the North Carolina Center for the Advancement of Teaching in Cullowhee, North Carolina. It's their North Carolina 2022 Career and Technical Education Teacher of the Year Award. So we would like to say congratulations to Mrs. Cummins, and we just pray and hope that she will be successful in this competition, and we believe she will. So as we begin our new year with these celebrations in our school family, you know, it's sad also to say that we must begin as well with some condolences. For those that may not know, our sincere condolences go out to the family of Mrs. Pegram White, the principal of San Hope Early College High School. She lost her husband this weekend. So we ask for prayers for her, as well as any other family that we may not be aware of, and who lost someone since our last meeting. So that concludes my 3 remarks that I have for tonight, and we will continue now and ask for approval of our agenda that we have before us.
Ms. Pickett, may I say something before we go on?
Yes.
I am the proud great-grandmother, a grandson today this morning. Louis Isaac Maynard, and he's my second great-grandbaby. I have a girl and a boy. Maybe that's enough. That's plenty. Thank you.
Okay.
But I just said.
Well, thank you.
But anyway,
You know, we were saying celebrations, and
yeah.
we're always thankful and celebrating the birth of a new one. You know, what the Bible says, you should be crying, but celebrate when they feed, but we want to celebrate on the entrance there.
You
Okay,
be one of the
congratulations.
school students one day too, you know, so we were looking back, you know, and he's gonna be in school, our school one of these days.
One day, you certainly will. Thank you. Thank you so much. So at this time, maybe get approval of our agenda that we have before us.
I
Yes.
move that we approve the agenda for August the 16th, 2022.
Maybe get a second?
I second.
It's been moved and probably second that we approve the agenda that we have before us. Are there any questions? If none, all in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Our agenda has been approved. Okay, so we will continue now for public comments. And at this time, we'll turn it over to our superintendent.
Okay. Ms. Murkison, do we have any members listed for public comment?
We do not.
Okay, we do not.
Okay. Well, next on our agenda, then we will have our consent agenda, and we had 2 items here this week. We know if everyone had a chance to read those. Okay, evidently you did. You didn't say no. So maybe get approval. Maybe get approval of our consent agenda. You have it for us?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Maybe get a second.
Second.
Moved and properly second that we approve the consent agendas that we have before us. Are there any questions? None. All in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. So the consent agenda has been approved. At this time, we have our administration, and we will yield to our superintendent for administration.
Okay, so good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. This evening, we do have 3 information items. Information item A is a review of our back to school safety updates and protocols. Our staff has been working very closely with our local law enforcement to review and update our safety protocols to maximize the safety in all of our schools. At this time, I would like to ask Dr. Chad Hunt, our Assistant Superintendent of Operations and Information Systems, to please provide an overview of our safety measures for the 22-23 school year.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. Hope everybody's doing well tonight.
Yes.
It's not usually that lively. So, back to school safety updates for this year. The last time that we were together back in July, we shared some information about the WRAL news story that was coming out as it was linked to the RAVE smart app that we utilize here in Hope County Schools. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and in case you didn't get to see the WRAL news segment, we're also going to watch that link tonight. But the first thing is that it is a smartphone app, which provides us with the ability to communicate with law enforcement and first responders in case there is some type of emergency that happens on campus, but it can also be used by staff members to alert administration that there is something that's taking place on campus. Staff members not only can send those alerts, but they can also receive those alerts to their connected smartphone as long as they are connected via the system with a telephone number and an email address. And if they don't have a smartphone app, they can have that to be sent, I think it's to their email address instead, and text messages to their phone to receive those notifications. So what the administrator of each school does is that throughout the year, as we have staff turnover or new staff members join our Hope County Schools family, the school administrator who's in charge of safety updates a Excel application or Excel sheet, and then they send that over to Mr. French, and Mr. French doesn't upload it to the system, so that way we're staying abreast and just making sure that all of our staff members can receive those updates and utilize that app throughout the school day in case an emergency arises. To go along with that, Dr. Dallas and the assistant superintendents, as well as the school resource officers, are also linked into the app for every single school. So that way, in case there is an emergency, we also get notified and we're aware of what's taking place on campus. And throughout the year, last year, there were times where you did receive those phone calls from us letting you know that something may have taken place on campus, and we gave you an update about that as well. Every school year, beginning of last school year, we started testing the app. So there are, it's the red button over there that you see on that smartphone. It's an active shooter alert. And generally, if you hold that button down, it's for a couple of seconds. That's what notifies law enforcement that there's an active threat on campus. And we coordinate with our local law enforcement agencies to notify them that we are doing a test twice a year, once in the fall, once in the spring, or generally sometime after Christmas, just to make sure that as they have staff turnover or that they have new staff members join their forces, that they too are receiving those updated links. So that helps with their training and also helps to ensure that they can respond in a timely manner. Ms. Bounds, if you want to press that link.
For school shootings in Newtown, Connecticut, Parkland, Florida, and most recently Uvalde, Texas, share common lessons.
It's all about time. It's all about more efficient communication and response.
The newly signed state budget allocates $4.4 million to put panic alarms in North Carolina middle and high schools.
We certainly always want to make sure that we can do everything to keep our students and our staff safe. We do have a plan. We practice that plan. We're ready to implement that plan. We hope we never have to.
To get a better sense of how the panic button technology works, we traveled here to Hope County, a school system that implemented the phone app back in 2018.
When we set this app up, we say who is notified.
Assistant Superintendent Dr. Dawn Ramser demonstrates the RAVE app, allowing all school employees to hit a button on their cell phones to activate a response to anything from a student allergic reaction, fire, suspicious person on campus, to an active shooter.
There's no question, there's no waiting, there's no explaining. It happens immediately.
Since 2018, have you actually used the system?
We have. Most of our incidents have been medical incidents. We do a lot of drills with this.
At least twice a year, Hope schools practice using the app during active shooting and other drills to coordinate communication and response among school staff, EMS, and law enforcement if needed.
The importance of that is not just to make sure that they are receiving that information, but our staff members are receiving it as well. So everybody from teachers at the school level up to central office.
So why not just call 911?
You might be on the phone with 911 for several minutes. And if you don't have time to then tell someone on site what's going on, then they can't lock down that building. They can't evacuate that building.
Greg Arts is CEO of Charlotte-based Punch Technology, serving schools and agencies across the country with cloud-based alert systems. Punch Alert has been used to coordinate lockdowns in response to shooters, medical emergencies, even missing children. The texts, emails, calls, and action plans are documented in a report.
That allows you to kind of look back whether there's a drill or a real incident and say, here's what happened on that day. And if you can measure it, you can manage it.
With all your safety measures, how important is the panic button technology?
I think it's just another layer.
Administrators stress a panic button complements school resource officers, cameras, and locked doors, but isn't foolproof depending on cell service and Wi-Fi. WRAL Investigates found one example where a panic button likely stopped a school shooting in Arkansas. A student told a teacher about a classmate who had a gun. The teacher hit the panic button, immediately locking down the school. Within minutes, that student was in custody and the weapon was seized.
Nobody can say it's never going to happen. We can't. But what we say is we're prepared.
While panic buttons can't prevent all school shootings, they can help save lives with time. Cullen Browder, WRAL News, Hope County.
And Cullen tells us the state budget also includes $200,000 a year to keep the system updated.
Thank you. So as Dr. Ramshaw said in that interview or the news segment, is that everything that you're hearing about is a layer of security. It's not a end-all means of approach by any means, but it is a layer that we are placing into our system or have placed into our system to help with the security of our staff and students and any visitors that may be on campus as well. So to follow up with the RAVE application that we've been utilizing for a year, last year after those mass school shootings that took place across the nation, the Sheriff's Department kind of partnered with us, so to speak, and began doing school safety wellness checks. And basically what they did was they went around to the campus, identified if doors were locked or unlocked, windows open, closed, locked, etc. They looked to see if any of these staff members on campus would question who they were, because for most cases they were not in uniforms. They were in plain clothes trying to gain access to the school. So it was basically a safety check. And then this summer we met with the sheriff and his administrative team to talk about what we could do in order to become better in implementing some safety points. And so to go along with that, we did partner with them this summer on August the 9th, which was about a week ago, and we did an active shooter drill. And that was, an invitation was extended out to the Hope County Schools, or Hope County Sheriff's Department, Rayford Police Department. We also had Robertson County Sheriff's Department here, North Carolina Highway Patrol, Wildlife Resources Commission, Public Creek Fire Department, and local EMS first responders. So we had a pretty good crowd of law enforcement and first responders here at Hope County High School on campus that day. It lasted for about half a day. We started about 8 or 8:30. Law enforcement was here earlier, and everything was concluded around 1 or 2 o'clock. We invited all of our administrative staff members to participate in this drill with the Sheriff's Department, and we had about approximately 35 staff members, that's including school administrators from all levels, elementary, middle school, and high school, as well as central office staff. And I think that opportunity was really eye-opening for everybody who was involved, because that provided a point of view from the first responders aspect to the victims aspect, but also to the suspects' point of view as well. And we had conversations with our local law enforcement agents about what type of impact that makes on their lives as well. So in those conversations, we had the opportunity, and we developed relationships with some of those law enforcement agencies, as well as just holding good communication during that time and talking about the safety of the importance, or the importance of the safety and the importance of those drills. And, we provided them with school maps of all the schools so that they could become familiar with the layout of every school in case something ever did happen and they had to respond. But we also have a news clip of what took place that day.
Download the WREL Sportsman app for all the latest in sports news.
Today in Hope County, the school system and law enforcement trained together to save lives in a worst-case scenario. An active shooter on campus is a nightmare that can happen anywhere. WREL's Mark Boyle shows us how trainers made the experience feel real so that first responders can be prepared.
The scenario at Hope County High School involved a response in the case of an active shooter threat on campus. Multiple law enforcement agencies and educators knew it was just a drill with air guns, but it felt real.
And my conversation to the teachers and staff was, hey, look, now you see what you may be experiencing, and it'll be a little bit more intense if this were to happen in real life.
Every law enforcement officer took a turn at responding to shots fired and teachers screaming for help. As time ticks away, there's a chance that a responder may react too carefully, too slowly. In a real case scenario, lives could be lost. That's what was on Amanda Briggs's mind.
It just was very eye-opening, and it made me rethink some things that we might do at our school and just think about how can I keep my students the safest I can.
Hope County High School's principal believes this kind of preparation should happen in every county of the state, big or small.
When you got 2,000 students on a campus, you want to make sure that security and safety is of the utmost importance. And so this allowed us to kind of see from a visual standpoint what that procedure would look like.
Thinking that it couldn't happen here is no longer an option.
You just don't ever know. We'll just take one day at a time because things happen. That's just the world.
Mark Boyle, WRAL News.
Law enforcement groups in the drill recognize the increased need for close cooperation, planning, and practice between law enforcement agencies and regular communication with schools.
Thank you, sir. Like I said, on that day, those critical conversations that were held, they became emotional because some of that stuff did hit home, so to speak, with whenever we were placed into those drills and those role-playing activities. So it was very, very eye-opening. It was important to have and very critical to have, and I hope that we can continue that partnership with the Sheriff's Department and our local law enforcement agencies in the future. Talking about relationships with local law enforcement, so that you all know, every year we are allocated so many SROs for our school district, and right now we're at 8 allotments of SROs or school resource officers, and of course you know that we have 14 schools. So that means that some of our school resource officers do rotate throughout the day and to help with different duties at every school. While that person is on speed dial for our school administrators, again, this is the opportunity to where if something did happen on campus, we have that RAVE application where the school administrators or staff members can notify local law enforcement and the first responders would respond in a timely manner. New for the upcoming school year is the requirement of ID badges or name badges. And if you've been noticing, some of us in here tonight are wearing our name badges. But that is something that we kind of had a conversation with the sheriff and the sheriff's department, and we realized the importance of this piece, so that if something were to happen, students or staff members could be identified. But not only that, but we know that throughout the school day, if we're requiring our staff members and students to wear ID badges, and we notice that somebody is on campus who doesn't have one, that's a red flag, and we should be asking who is this person? Why are you on campus? How can we help you? You should or should not be in this area. But that's going to be all central office staff members are going to be required to wear those beginning this month, as well as our school staff members are going to be required to wear them. When we talk about students, grades 6 through 13 students are going to be required to wear them at all time. Elementary school students are going to be a little bit different just because they're elementary school students. But we are providing them with name badges as well, and those might attach to their book sack or something like that. And we'll talk about why we're going to do that part here in another couple of slides. There are some exceptions to the name badges or the ID badges in certain departments, such as maintenance and bus mechanics, because they're working with heavy duty equipment. And we wouldn't want something to happen to where they had a name badge or landed around their neck and it get caught up on a piece of equipment and lead to an accident. Also to talk about another exception would be our child nutrition employees, because they're not supposed to have anything hanging from around their neck when they're in the cafeteria working, and also working with that kitchen equipment. So what they'll do is they'll have them on them, probably in their pocket somewhere, and that's where they'll keep their ID badges every day. But if they have to leave out of the kitchen or out of the cafeteria to go to the office or somewhere, they'll place them around their neck. So they'll have them and they'll be wearing them on campus as well.
Yeah. Oh, you want to ask a question later? I just want to ask you something.
Oh, no, feel free.
Okay, they cannot have it around their necks. What about a pen?
We've also discussed that as well, Ms. Carpenter and I have, so there's something that she is looking at, having one of those retractable, pens or.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. We've talked about that as an idea as well. Yes, ma'am.
Will the Board of Ed, us as members get
Yes.
one when we're on campus?
We are
Yes,
getting you badges.
We have to anyway. We have to have it.
That way too, when you go out to schools, so that we can all model the way we'll wear them and you'll be able to use them for games and things as well.
Yep, and you can get those made in the Human Resources Department.
We're gonna give one of those things like you have on.
Yes, ma'am. So what we did at central office is that we provided the clear plastic, name badge holders as well as the lanyards. And then the schools will be providing for their staff members and students as well. Yes, ma'am. Go back.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. All right, so custodians will also be expected to wear their uniforms, because their uniforms do have their names on them this year. And also an ID badge as well, because we do understand that sometimes they may not always be in a uniform and may have on a Hope County school shirt. So if that's the case, they'll have their ID badge and still be able to be visible and identified as a staff member. What we want to do for the students, or what we will do for the students, is it'll be the first name, last name, picture, grade level, their school name, and PSU or public school unit, which is Hope County Schools, so that we can identify that yes, they are a student of ours in Hope County. Staff members will be their first name, last name, the picture, and the school name, and their position, and it'll also have the school year on it as well, so 2022-23, and those change from year to year. All right, thank you. Continuing with safety protocols, again, after speaking with our law enforcement agents, we do realize that we want to make sure that everything is nice and secure at schools. So what we mean by that is locked doors and not allowing anybody and everybody to just have instant access to our school buildings. So one thing that we are looking at doing, we're actually already in the process of doing, is purchasing what's called an A-phone system for every front entrance door in our school district, for every school. An A-phone entrance or an A-phone system is basically, and you'll see a picture here in a minute, but it's a box that goes on the door. It has a camera on it and also a microphone, and it can also act as a doorbell. So basically, somebody walks up, whoever has that, the screen, the LCD display in the main office that's responsible for viewing that will receive a notification. Kind of sound like a doorbell once they press that, and then they'll be able to have that two-way communication from the office to the front door. And we are, like I said, we've already began purchasing those and working with the company to get those installed in our schools. After we do the A-phone systems, we began to look at key fobs for our schools. And we do have some that are, we would consider priority schools or the open campus schools, such as Hawkeye Elementary, Upchurch, Scurlock, all of these schools that are open campuses that have multiple doors of access. And those key fobs basically be a keyless entry, so that our staff members could either use a fob, which is basically goes on the key ring, or it would be a smart card reader. Just haven't narrowed that down yet, but those are two options that we can look at. And so basically they would just have their ID card, walk up to it and scan the card, and it would grant them access instead of having to worry about keys to every door. So like I said earlier, we want to make sure that all entrance and exit doors are locked during the school day. We don't want to leave any school doors propped open, and we know that we've got to change some human behaviors of doing such. As an example, some schools that whenever they go outside for recess, because the back door is locked, they may stick a rock in the door to prop that door open during recess time, and we want to get out of those habits and continue to keep those doors locked. Also, we will be allowing visitors to the school during the day. The only thing that, yes, they've got to gain access by either going to the window and doing business or doing business with the A phone stating that they have an appointment with the school administrator as an example, or they might be at the school for an IEP meeting or whatever the reason may be. But whenever they come into the buildings, we're going back to that system of all visitors are required to sign in. So their first stop would be at the office, check in with the receptionist, do their signing process as needed in the past or as required in the past, and then they can go on about the required business for that day. Also, during the school day, we're going to keep all the classroom doors locked and closed. That's just for the purpose that in case there was a school intruder, then they would not have instant access into the classroom where our students are located or staff members. And with that being the case, then the teachers or teacher assistants, the staff members' responsibility now begins to be, you got to have a key to get into that door, so it's important to bring the key with you to work every day. Continuing for this year, just COVID protocols that we've had in the past is that we will continue to be spraying or disinfecting classrooms and buildings, as well as continuing to disinfect high-touch surface areas. And then for elementary schools during the first week of school, basically there's not going to be any, parents are not going to be allowed to escort students into the buildings. The exception to that will be our pre-K students and our kindergarten students. Those parents will be able to escort their students into the building on their staggered first day of school and then on their second day back to school, so which is essentially going to take up the whole week. For the elementary schools, they will be able to have, those parents for kindergarten and pre-K will have access during those 2 days only. So it might be that a student comes in on Monday for pre-K, but they won't be back again until possibly Wednesday or Thursday.
Sorry.
All right, so this is an example of the A-phone system that I was just speaking about. So as you can see, it has on the left-hand side, that's a school door, and it has that mechanical device on that door, which is attached, and that little black circle, I don't know if you can see it or not, but that little black circle is the camera, and then it has the speaker box on there. And then on the right-hand side, this is an older system than what we're looking at getting. The system that we're looking at getting, I think, has a 7-inch LCD display, so it's larger than the one that's on the right-hand side. But that's an older system. But you can see that that's where the receptionist or the principal, assistant principal, somebody in the front office or staff member could communicate with those visitors who are on campus to identify who they are and what type of business needs to be conducted during the day. Another layer of security is the Here Comes the Bus app. This is not new to Hope County schools, but we are beginning to require the use of it with our staff members, but also encouraging parents as well as students to use this app. It is accessible on a smartphone or on the website as long as you have the username and login information. Basically, it provides, based off of GPS, real-time updates of where a school bus is located. But also, if the students are using their ID badge, as we spoke about earlier, since it has that barcode on it, the students can scan on and scan off of the bus. So when a student scans on, the parent will get a notification that the student has boarded the bus. Then when they scan off the bus, when they arrive at campus, it gives them an update that the student has exited the bus. Same thing for at home or afternoon drop-offs as well. Scan on, getting on the bus at campus, and then scan off whenever they reach their location, so that parents are aware. Because sometimes it becomes questions of what time is my child getting home, or how can I verify that they're getting off at the right location. So we have that information. And last but not least, we have updated our fleet of buses to a ProVision bus camera, which is now a cloud-based recording which allows our school administrators to have instant access to the bus video. So that's it's gonna be really helpful whenever it comes down to having to do any type of investigations, or if an incident happens on the bus, or if it comes down to some type of discipline needs. Now these school administrators can access this information or these recordings instead of having to wait for the bus garage to pull this information, review the video, and then try to clip it down and share it out, which sometimes may have taken a day or 2 days or even up to a week to do it, because only 1 or 2 people were able to have that access. Now all school administrators have this access on the same day that it's recorded. The only exception to that is going to be that we have 7 spare buses, which are going to remain with the traditional camera system, which is basically a memory card. And what would happen in the past is if we had to pull that memory card off the bus to retrieve video, and the memory card wasn't replaced back in there, and that video camera didn't work for that day or for that afternoon route or that morning route, whichever one it was. And then we lose video and don't have access to video. So this eliminates that. And I didn't put this on here, but we also have 4 school buses that have stop arm cameras on them now. And then so that's gonna be, each bus is gonna go into one direction of the school district, so north, south, east, and west. And, you know, on the stop arm, if somebody happens to run the stop bus while the arm's out, we'll have video of that, be able to share that with law enforcement to report that license plate number. And if there was any type of accident to happen, let's hope that there's not, and pray that there's not any type of accident that happens in that manner, but we would also have that video from that as well and be able to provide that to law enforcement. I think that's it. Any questions?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
How many SRs do you have here at the high school on site, that's gonna be on site?
2.
1 on each side?
Yes, ma'am. Usually they are, 1 on the Gibson side and 1 on the McDonald side.
And then also last year, we added what we call a security monitor, who basically helps monitor, circulate, checks doors, and then this year we've added a second one. So they'll have 2 SROs and then 2 security monitors. So we kind of feel like having 2 people on each side. A lot of times it's just circulation, extra eyes, that monitoring piece. So that's where we're at with the high school.
Okay, it may help, because I think they have more people on staff now at the sheriff department. But the other question is, how are they gonna be doing spot checks with these IDs? Because you have some students that will probably give their ID to somebody that's not even enrolled in school, just because they have something, they're trying to cause some kind of friction or conflict on campus. So will y'all be with teachers, will y'all be doing spot checks with these IDs?
And a lot of times too, like when they go through the cafeteria line, like names come up. So if they go through the media center, a name will come up. So a lot of times too, they help match with that. But that's definitely something all administrators are really gonna be paying attention to really set, to set the pattern, make sure they're doing it, and like you said, just checking. Because when we spoke with law enforcement, we had some really good conversations. And an ID badge doesn't always seem like that important, but when we listen to their point of view, and they talked about when we get called onto a campus, the first thing we do is we look for who doesn't belong. And they said the first thing we look for are badges, right? Like Dr. Hunt said, if you don't have one on, why don't you have one on? Do you belong here? So that's kind of the background of the why. But yes, we definitely want to check because it's very easy to pass off an ID badge.
Right, so how will you do that if a student doesn't have an ID or they happen to lose the ID? So what do you?
They have, each school will have ID badge makers here. So either they can get a second badge made, they can do stickers. Sometimes they do temporary ones. That's a sticker that will have their picture and their name. But each school will have a supply of badges that they can make them on the spot. We wanted to make it pretty convenient for the schools to not have any reason why they cannot have one.
Okay, I was just asking because I hear you say the second ID, so I'm saying sometimes they may not have lost the ID and then we give them 2 IDs and then they passing that ID to somebody that don't belong. So that's what I'm saying. I'm just looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, it's definitely something we'll have to watch. You're always gonna have to be looking at faces and badges and who matches. Yeah, that's a good point.
Do we have, I know we have these bus monitors and this cloud stuff, do we have anybody to drive them? You have a meeting today or something?
We did have bus driver training, the mandatory meeting that always takes place at the beginning of the school year to talk about the do's and don'ts in the bus driver's manual. Ever since last year, we have been working towards trying to fill all of our vacancies as bus drivers. I think that we're in a better spot than we were last year.
Okay.
But it's been critical conversations that we've been having with school administrators to remind them, so to speak, about those employees who are in dual employment positions. And when we talk about being fair, who's being required to drive and who's not, whenever we have certain forms on file that when the employees were hired, they knew that that was part of the requirements.
Yeah.
So we're trying to put the accountability piece in place to hold everybody accountable for fulfilling their duties. So we are working on it.
Are we improving? Are we improving?
yes.
Oh, yes, ma'am, we are improving.
Okay. Doing what we can do.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions?
I just want to ask you one, and you may have this already. What about substitute teachers? Do you have just a pool that you have here in Hope County that you use? And they will have the ID for them.
Well, do they actually go, and Mr. O'Connor, you might want to speak to that.
Well, on both points, tomorrow morning, we're hosting a classified teacher orientation, teacher assistant orientation. So on that part, we're gonna address the dual employment bus drivers. So we have 50 people coming tomorrow morning that will be eligible to get a CDL license to drive buses. So that'll help that piece of it. And then in the same right, we've been reaching out to everybody that we can find that might be interested in substitute teaching, in rebuilding our roster kind of was depleted over COVID. We weren't letting a lot of people come in and they had to find employment elsewhere. So we've been trying to rebuild that roster. We have a couple dozen coming in tomorrow morning at the Ag Center with us to go through some training and potentially looking for ways to get them licensed as teachers as well for those that are interested. But as of today, as of about 5:30, we had about 17 that were interested in doing long-term subbing jobs for us, which are some of the harder jobs to fill for us in schools because, you know, we have maternity leaves, we have all sorts of things that happen in schools. So it is a different level of commitment for them to say, okay, I'll work in the school for 3 months in one position. But yes, we're trying to rebuild that roster right now, and we have quite a few coming in tomorrow we feel good about.
Okay.
And all of these people will come to HR and get badges.
I got one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Did I hear you not say that? Did you say that y'all are allowing visitors in the schools now? Like like parents can come and sit in classrooms and, is that what you're saying or what you saying?
They have to sign in that they're able to come in if they have meetings or an appointment. They're able to come to the building. They just have to sign in at the main office.
Also, they can't go
We're
in the
just not
classrooms and
doing
observe or?
The kiss and go, like in the morning line, we're keeping that in place to avoid trying to have 200 extra parents, people in the buildings. So that's why we're limiting that. But once the instructional day, if parents want to come in and hold business, IEP meetings, go to a classroom,
Okay,
they're able to do that.
okay.
We just want everybody going right through that main office so they can swipe their ID and we know that they're allowed to be there.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Daily subs, either bus people or classroom people, will they turn those badges in at the end of the day, or do they keep them even though they might not be coming back for a week or so?
Like a long-term sub or even just a sub that,
Not a long-term.
yeah, usually we allow them to keep them. It would be issued for the school year because they're on our roster as a sub that we have to call.
And they could take them home. And they don't have to come back for, say, 3 weeks, they are walking around with a badge.
Well, I mean, usually, I've never seen anybody do that, but a lot of our, I'll be honest, a lot of our subs are used 3-4 times a week.
Yeah.
So we've not really had an issue where they're not there to say, you know, can we have your badge back until you come back into the system? But that would be something we could look at to see if we had any that, you know, were not very frequent. We have, most of our subs though are pretty frequent subs. They're in the buildings quite a bit.
And To go along with that, Ms. Bowie, as Dr. Dallas mentioned earlier, we do have that ability to make a temporary or visitor pass that is just a sticker that they can put on for that day if it's somebody that's not there but once a month or something of that nature. So that is an option. There's no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so information item B is a review of our COVID-19 updates, testing and protocols for the 22-23 school year. At this time, we'd like to ask Dr. Peggy Owens, our Executive Director of Student Support Services, to share these with everyone.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Superintendent, and members of the board. We're going to share the slide presentation with you, our COVID updates. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is just to give you a glimpse of our numbers from last week in terms of the number of cases that was reported, and we had one, and that was staff member. As you know, we're still maintaining and keeping up with those persons. We're still tracking that data. Next slide. So in terms of our numbers for Hope County, we are still, we're in red. And so with that being in red, the recommendation for CDC, you can go to, I'm just gonna talk it through here. Okay. So we're still in red. So the recommendation from CDC is that for our county that we would utilize layering protection. And what that means is that encourage individuals to get vaccinated, wear tight fitting masks, get tested, and get treatment. And so those are the board recommendation in terms of layering. So next.
Anything else on this slide?
Yeah. I just spoke to that. Go to the next. So our back to school protocols, and that's what we want to share with you. We're just going to walk you through that document. It's on the board minute here. I think each of you have a copy. So in terms of our back to school protocol, and you've heard a few bullets already from Dr. Hunt. As all of us know, and I think maybe Beth said this morning from the webinar with Dr. Taylor, he said that we still have COVID. And so he would encourage all of us to be vigilant. And so as we know that we'll be living with COVID, there are some things that we can do as a community to help reduce the spread, and also for each person to be more responsible to help us as we live through this disease. So number one, some things that we'll be doing here in our school system, keeping our families informed of the available COVID vaccines and provide information. We will keep them up to date as it relates to that. We will remind people who have symptoms of respiratory or gastrointestinal infection, such as cough, fever, sore throat, vomiting, or diarrhea, to stay home. Number three, we'll increase outdoor air intake and ventilation, such as safely opening windows, including on our buses, and also encouraging our staff, our teachers to engage in outdoor activities as it is applicable to their lessons. We will focus on and re-emphasize hand washing to lower the risk of spreading virus. And as we know, hand washing is just a good health practice, you know, even prior to COVID. We will provide hand sanitizer containing at least 60% of alcohol in all of our buildings and buses. We will conduct daily cleaning and disinfection protocols in all of our buildings, including our buses and also those high-touch areas like your doors in and out. We will provide well-fitting masks at all schools and on buses for students, staff, and visitors. And I know that some of you board members asked for, so you were having a difficult time finding the KN95 mask, right? Okay, and you did receive, yes, okay. Our pleasure, okay, all right. And we have plenty of these for our students and staff, okay? Then we will also offer diagnostic testing and provide screening testing programs in our schools. We will recommend that students or staff with symptoms or who develop symptoms while at school to wear a well-fitting mask while in the building until they can exit the building. We will notify parents of students who have symptoms or who have developed symptoms and will be sent home, and we will encourage testing. We will also make home tests available. We will make those available to our students and staff. We will provide information as it relates to quarantining and isolation to our parents. Students and staff who test positive for COVID-19 will stay home for at least 5 days and quarantine from others or isolate from others. If you have no symptoms, they will end their quarantine after 5 days. If you had symptoms in after 5 days, then they will, with symptoms, they will wear their mask if they are fever-free for 24 hours without using any fever-reducing medication. And if the symptoms are improving, if you still have a fever and other symptoms that have not improved, you will continue to quarantine or isolate until they improve. After you have ended that isolation, those persons are feeling better, there's no fever, very little symptoms, then they will be required to wear a tight-fitting mask through day 10, which usually, so if they have the disease COVID 5 days, and we talked about all of the in between, then there will be another 5 days of wearing the mask. Quarantine is no longer recommended for people who are exposed to COVID-19 individuals. So if I'm exposed, I do not have to quarantine. However, people who have been exposed to COVID-19 should follow recommendation to wear a well-fitting mask for 10 days and get tested. We will continue case investigation and contact tracing for early identification cases to help reduce transmission. We will maintain a safe room in all of our schools. Our schools will continue to utilize and maintain a COVID-19 data tracker, and the district dashboard will continue to be updated weekly. We will also, we've talked about this earlier, provide enhanced protection supplies. So we will have gloves, face shields if requested. And we do have all of those items currently in stock. And so this is our back to school protocol. And we shared this information this afternoon with the school principals. And of course, they will be sharing with their staff. Do you have any questions as it relates to the protocol at this time? Yes.
Explain how the safe room is set up.
Well, the safe room, we haven't really changed that. It's usually just, it's a chair. It depends on where it's located in the building, but it's a dedicated space. So if those students who are sick, we can remove them and separate them from other students until their parents are able to come and pick them up.
So they're still in the classroom, basically?
No, ma'am, they're in a separate dedicated space. That may be, it depends on the school. For example, like in Upchurch, we have a space where the nurse's office is. There are 2 offices there. So one of those spaces is utilized as a safe space. So it kind of depends, each school's safe space and location may be different. It's not always in the front office area, but that's the goal. Any other questions? Okay, so if you could just flip back to the slide. So as we said earlier, in terms of our testing program, as you know, I think I reported last week, we did, our contract was renewed for this coming year for our K-12 testing. And so we will have that available for both our staff as well as our students. We'll be able to take advantage of that. There will be some other features. We're in the process of working on that as we, just say as I speak now, because we were in a webinar today getting that information. So we will have access to home tests, and we will be able to send those tests home to our students, and the parents will have them also in addition to diagnostic testing. With the renewed contract, we will have some options as it relates to mental health services, if you will, for our students, and also to be able to order some additional health and safety supplies to support our program. Questions?
Thank you, Dr. Owens. And our last information item is our monthly financial report. So if we have any questions, please direct them to our finance officer, Ms. Lonnie Chavis. Okay, so if we have no questions, Madam Chair and members, that does conclude our information items for this evening.
Okay, thank you so much. We will continue then on our agenda. And the next item, we have closed session. May we have permission to go to closed session?
Madam Chair, I move that the board enters into closed session under North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11 to prevent a disclosure of confidential personnel matters, to consider matters relating to initial employment of individual employees, and to consult with the board's attorney to preserve attorney-client's privilege.
May we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we would go into closed session for the items that just been mentioned. All in favor, let me know by sign of aye. Opposes? Ayes have it. So we would go into closed session for about 5 minutes.
We'll go to session about 5 minutes.
All right.